folks. Welcome to the first in a series of 7 lessons on the modes of the major scale. So first of all, we start with mode number 1, which is also known as the Ionian Mode. Ionian is just another name for major scale. So it's literally the major scale. And we're going to be mainly focusing on 2 keys today, one of which is C major, or C Ionian, the other of which is E flat major, or E flat Ionian. Okay, so let's first of all start out with the key of C major. Now, we're going to get more into what a mode is as we go through to the second mode in the next lesson. But essentially, we're just going to start with the major scale as our foundation here. And the major scale is comprised of 7 notes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now, these numbers are referred to as intervals. So an interval is the distance from one note to the next. And generally speaking, in music, we measure this numerically. So 1 is the root, 2 is the second note of the major scale, 3 is the third note, 4 the fourth note, 5th, 6th, 7, and then 8 is the octave. That's the same note as the 1, up an octave, which we call 8. But generally speaking, we're just going to be going in 1 octave here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then the octave. Okay, so now we got that out of the way. What we need to understand is that in order to get the sound of a mode, or in this case, mode number 1, the major scale, we need to have a chord progression that will really highlight the mood of the mode. Really, moods are what they should be called, not modes, because moods really reflects the fact that each of these modes we're going to go through over the next 7 lessons have a different mood. Now, major scale would probably be the most neutral sounding of the modes. I would say it's happy. So happiness would be the mood as far as I'm concerned. And basically, the home chord, that's the chord that we're going to kind of treat as the 1 chord in this case, built from this first note in the major scale, C. And it's going to be a major chord. So C major in this case, because we're in the key of C. So this is what we call our 1 chord. Now, it's very important to understand that when we harmonize a major scale, we end up with different chords being harmonized from each of the notes in the scale. And generally speaking, we harmonize chords in thirds. That means wherever we start from, we jump up to the 3rd note from there, and then the 3rd note from there, and that gives us a triad, a chord. Okay, so if we take the 1st note, skip the 2nd note, go to the 3rd, skip the 4th note, go to the 5th, we end up with these 3 notes from the major scale, which form a C major chord. Now, we can do that from every note in the scale. So if we start from the 2nd note of the C major scale, which is the D note, we go D, skip a note, F, skip a note, A. D, F, A gives us a D minor chord. And then we do the same thing from the 3rd note. So here's the 3rd note in the C major scale. We go E, skip a note, we get E, G, B. Now, we can't always play these in the position of the scale due to the fact that in this case we have 2 notes on the same string, this note on the next string, but due to the nature of the guitar, we can reposition those same notes onto different strings. So this gives us an E minor from the 3. And if we continue through the scale, we get the same thing. We go from the 4th note, skip to the 3rd, skip to the 3rd, we get F, A, C, that gives us an F major chord. And then same thing from the 5th note, skip a note, G, B, D gives us a G major chord. And then Same thing from the sixth note, skip a note, we get A, C, E, gives us an A minor chord. And then we go from the seventh note, skip a note, gives us a B diminished. And then finally back to the root, we get C major. So now we got these 7 chords: C major, D minor, E minor, F major, G major, A minor, B diminished, back to C. They're the 7 chords that we build from the C major scale. So now we got that out of the way, what I want you to memorize is the fact that any major key, any major scale, has the chords in that order. That is major, minor, minor, major, major, minor, diminished, back home to major. So that's major, minor, minor, major, major, minor, diminished. So I always think major, then 2 minors, 2 majors, minor, diminished. It helps me just to memorize it more easily. And that's going to be in any key. So later on when we go to the key of E flat, we're going to have the same formula of a major chord built from the 1, a minor chord built from the 2, minor chord from the 3, major chord from the 4, major chord from the 5, major chord from the 6, minor chord from the 6, diminished chord from the 7, back to major chord. That's the key of E flat. So it's always going to go major, minor, minor, major, major, minor, diminished, any major key. So now we got that out of the way. How do we build a chord progression that really highlights the quality of a mode, in this case the major scale? What we do is, there's many ways to do this, but essentially one really good way is to take the 4 and the 5 chord from the key. So in this case we're in C, so 1, 2, 3, 4. The 4 chord is our F major, and the 5 chord is our G major. So we're going to take that 4 and 5 chord and place it over the root note of the scale, which in this case is C major. So we're going to put a C in the base of those 2 chords. Now, because we're in C major, we're also going to play the 1 chord that we build it from. So we're going to get C major, G major with a C in the bass, F major with a C in the bass, G major with a C in the bass. So just 3 chords. And this really brings out the mood of the major scale. So that was our first little major chord progression. And what I did in the backing track is, just to save it from staying in one key the whole time, I then switched to a new key, a minor third away, the key of E flat. So in this case, we're going to get the same kind of idea. We got E flat major, and then the 4 chord is E flat, F, G, A flat, is A flat, and the 5 chord is B flat. So we got those 2 chords with the 1 chord of E flat. So we got E flat, B flat over E flat, A flat over E flat, B flat over E flat. And we just toggle back and forth between those keys, those 2 keys in the backing track, spending 4 bars on each key. So we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so let's listen to that with the backing track. Key of C. Okay, so hopefully you could hear those 2 keys. I'm going to include the backing track in the description below. And I encourage you to practice playing in the key of C. And then when the chords change, switch to the key of E flat. Okay, let me demonstrate that real quick with the backing track. So as you can see, I started out just playing up and down the major scale, and then ultimately tried to connect them and make them sound a little bit more musical. So I encourage you really to just start out just learning the notes, and then play around with the phrasing and things like that, ensuring that you change at the right point with the backing track when the key changes. If you're finding it too hard with the key change, simply just practice over the key of C on its own to begin with, and then the key of E flat on its own, and then eventually play them back to back with the backing track. So I really encourage you just to really delve into this. And one other thing that I will mention is we want to try to avoid just simply playing up and down the scale indiscriminately. We don't want to just be a machine going up and down a scale. We want to consider our phrasing and things like that. So one way of getting into that would be to practice playing intervallically. That means instead of playing always to the next note up or the next note down the scale, I would refer to that as playing in seconds. We're always going to the second note. The first one we can try is playing in thirds. That is where we're skipping every other note. So we're skipping the second and going straight to the third. So, and you can do that up the entire scale. And that's a really effective way of getting out of the rut of always going up to the next note. And then you can take it to the moon. I mean, you can then go to fourths, fifths, sixths, sevenths, octaves, and practice ascending and descending. So for example, you might go third, ascending, and then descending. So things like that, or fourths, fifths, and so on and so forth. This really gives you some more interesting melodic ideas. All right, I hope you've got some use out of this, and I hope you'll join me for the other mode lessons where we're really going to get our teeth sunk into what a mode is. This is just the first mode, Ionian, and we will move on from there. Thank you, folks. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.